Hi, this is Tommy Gibbs. Thanks for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule to view this video presentation. I'm honored and humbled that you would do so. First things first, let's make sure that you have a lot of people in the room with you, that you pull in as many managers as you possibly can. And people don't have to be a manager to really get a whole lot out of this. Matter of fact, I'll be touching on that here in just a second. I think one of the problems with that, by the way, is that oftentimes we in the business world, we do focus on trying to develop managers into becoming better leaders, but we need to realize that people don't have to be a manager to be a leader in our organization. And I think sometimes we fail to acknowledge that. There's a lot of things that we can do, again, as members of the management team and as a member of the leadership team or the senior leadership team or whatever the situation may be for you, by making sure that we have as much interaction as many of our team members as possible to try to help pull them into the leadership thinking. Oftentimes, some of your better leaders are not really managers. They're people that care a lot about your organization, care a lot about your company. They're trying to do the right thing every day. And if you take time to listen to some of what they have to say, you would help yourself, you'd help the organization, and certainly you would help them see a bigger and brighter future for themselves. If you have not already done so, everybody that's involved in this presentation that's sitting in the room with you needs a copy of the handout. These type of presentations are difficult to do, I believe, for me, certainly on my end, because I can't see you, I can't interact with you, and that cuts both ways. So it makes it a little bit difficult. You will help the presentation a lot by making sure that you take some notes. The handout that I provided the person with whose email address registered for this, that person that has that, hopefully you printed copies out for everyone. There's a whole lot of fill in the blanks in this presentation, so it would certainly be beneficial to make sure that you did it and handled it that way. So if you haven't made copies, do so real quick as I start this up. The name of the workshop or the webinar is Growing Your Leadership Team. Again, we have to think about this in terms of growing the team, and that we grow it from all aspects of our business. There's 5 levels of management I'll be talking about. You'll notice that on the screen there it says 5 levels of management, and then it's crossed through with leadership. And really talking about the 5 different positions of becoming a manager, becoming a really good leader, rather. And then the second part of this will be, what are you a champion of? We'll talk about some of the things that you should be a champion of. So there's going to be, 5 levels that we're going to talk about here in the first part. Now, a lot of my thinking and training over the years has come from reading and being in the automobile business and watching the good and the bad that I've seen exhibited by people that I worked with at some point, worked under, worked over, however you may want to think about that. And I certainly have read a lot. And as you know, the more you read on leadership, the more these things all sort of blend together. Some of the people that have heavily influenced me, though, is certainly John Maxwell. A lot of this thinking comes from John Maxwell. If you haven't read some of his books, I highly encourage you to do so. One of my favorites of his is Five Levels of Leadership. And another one that I really had loved, that I read about him in the early days of my career, was the Success Journey. It's excellent. Simon Sinek is another great one. He has a book called Why. I would encourage you to read that. And there's another one called Rhino Success by Scott Alexander and Dave Ramsey. They are also excellent. And certainly Dave Anderson is one of my heroes. If you happen to be in the automobile business and you listen to this, Dave Anderson certainly has been a big influence. And he cut his roots on the automobile business, and he's expanded to other areas of leadership and that sort of thing. But those are all people that certainly have had an influence on my thinking and what I'm actually presenting to you today. The first level of management, this is what I would call, and people would refer to as the position level. This is your first position in management, your first level of leadership. This is sort of where you start out. If you're in the automobile business, oftentimes that is a F&I manager, or it's an entry-level management position, maybe an assistant manager, maybe a desk manager, something like that. It just kind of depends. Maybe a team leader. Oftentimes dealerships operate under that scheme of things. So congratulations, you're a manager. I would ask you to write that down, because that's in your first page of your notes if you're going through your handout. And I would again urge you to do that. And now that you're a manager, this is all based on your previous accomplishments. You did something well for someone to see something in you to to assign you this management position. This position you have now has more or less been granted to you. It's that starter position, you might say. You might not be a man. You might be a manager, but you're not really a leader yet. Now, I hope that you have some ingrained leadership skills and that you already are a really good leader. But the odds are in this first position, let's pretend now that let's go back to when you first started. So some of you certainly are not at this level at the moment. You could be stuck there for some reasons, but this is what happens early on in you becoming a manager, becoming a leader, becoming a part of that leadership team in your organization. So you might not be a manager, you may be a manager, but you might not actually be a leader. But you're expected to be a leader. That's the funny part about it. As soon as we make you a manager, you're actually expected to have some leadership skills. What you, in the early days, again, think back, depending on where you are now, you really weren't ready. Now, the truth of the matter is none of us are ever ready for whatever the next step it is. If you're a general manager and now you get your own dealership and you buy your own dealership, you're probably not really ready, but you're ready enough to make it work, and you 99% of the time you do. Here's what's also kind of amusing, that the people who work under you, when you get into this level one, those people who work under you, they're following you because of your title. They're not really following you because you're a leader yet. They're following because they've got to do what you say or whatever it is that you're doing, because you now have the title of manager, so you have to follow you. The funny thing about all this, though, is that these people who are following you, oftentimes, let's say it's a sales team and you're a manager or you're a sales manager, they're following you, but they're not putting out maximum effort. They're not putting out much effort just yet, because they're again only following you because of your title. They're not following you because of anything you've done from a leadership standpoint. But the good news about all of this is you are now in a position to grow. So again, I have to keep, and this will probably annoy you, I have to keep referring back because many of you are really past this, but you have to think back in terms of what goes on when a person first gets in their first management position or first leadership position. But the key is that you've now that you've been anointed a manager, you're now in a position to grow. And lots of people get here. They do. A lot of people become a manager, but they stay here but don't get to the next level. So, there's people who end up getting anointed this first gig, you might say, but they never really move past that. They don't get to the next level. They stay there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But generally speaking, people who are real leaders, they don't decide to become an F&I manager for life. They don't decide to become a new car manager for life. They're trying to excel on to the next position. Now, some of the problems at level one, this is the whole level one thing, or maybe your first management gig, is that the problem with this level is oftentimes you've been promoted internally. It doesn't really matter or not if it's internal, but oftentimes that's the way it happens. And the people you're now supervising are people who were your friends. And boy, do people struggle with that, making that transition. You have to separate yourself from friendships. One of the things I always would first tell new salespeople when we bring new salespeople in and we run them through our training program at the end of the 2 weeks or whatever we were doing at the time program, I would go in as the dealer principal. I would talk to them and I would give them some advice. And one of the pieces of advice I would give them as a salesperson, it's really good advice, by the way, is I would advise them not to hang around with other salespeople. If you become friends with them and you get promoted, it becomes very difficult to manage them. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out to dinner or do something like that with people from time to time or play golf. But if you do that all the time, it does make it really, really hard. And if you hang out with people like that, if they're having a good month and you're having a bad month, they're going to pull you down. And if you're having a great month and they're having a bad month, they're going to pull you down no matter what. So again, the problem though is that oftentimes when we first get that big promotion, we're now supervising people who have been our friends. And there are people who want to see you fail. And this is one of the things you have to realize when you first get into management, first get into a leadership position. There are people who want to see you fail. There's people who are jealous that you got this, quote, promotion. What's also very interesting to me over time is oftentimes people who want to see you fail are your friends or even relatives, for that matter, because because if you fail, they feel better about their lousy lives. So you need to just come to the understanding that everybody's not exactly pulling for you. Yeah. The pressure of hitting numbers gets in the way of becoming a leader. So when you become a manager, one of the things that can happen to you is that you're under the gun to do numbers, and so you put your guard down. gets in the way of becoming a really good leader. And I'm going to elaborate on that a little more as we go along here. Another problem that you need to realize that when you first get in this position is, particularly in the automobile business, we have one department kind of fighting against another. And that frustrates a lot of newer people in management. I can't think of any department that's any more prevalent than one of my main subjects is used cars, because oftentimes used cars feels like they're in a fight between the service department and the parts department, and sometimes it has to do with pricing and attitudes, a whole lot of things that go on, and it becomes a real struggle for a newer manager or person that's in this level one. And the sidebar that you can see on the screen there, it's in parentheses, is that you need to control what you can control. There's going to be some things that you as a newer manager possibly just don't have any control of. Ownership thinks of things a certain way, and that's kind of the way it is, at least for now. And you have to kind of put that to the side someplace, forget about it, do the best you can, work hard, and everything's going to work out okay. Sometimes we overmanage people because we don't trust our team and they don't trust the manager either. I mean, oftentimes what happens to us, again, we get into this position, we know what some of the weaknesses are of some of the folks that are working underneath of us. We don't really trust them, and we try to overmanage, and that's not unusual at all. We want to put a lot of controls in. So a typical mistake, though, with newer managers is, and this kind of reference back up to that third bullet point up at the top about hitting numbers, we allow bullies to exist if they're productive. So because we need numbers, we sometimes let people stick around who are really hurting our organization. They're really hurting our overall culture and the things that we're trying to do. But because they're productive, we let them hang around. And we do that a lot of times in level 1 and 2 and 3 and so on. Hang on here 1 second. We have a slight, there we go. A reliance on technology. Oftentimes as we progress, we begin to rely on technology, and that also gives us greater control, and we see that as a great tool. Here's the problem though. The longer you stay here at this level, the lower the morale and the turnover becomes, because you kind of get in that groove. People get tired of dealing with you. It just doesn't work out well, and turnover starts to occur. I've often felt that when we're talking about managers, certainly now in reference to the sales department especially, oftentimes I've felt that what would work best, and I've done this in the past, is that we really need to move people out of the position they're in, the management position they're in, after about 3 years or so. You need a new challenge. I mean, I know, how many times have you seen an organization or dealership get sold, a new management team comes in and just rock the place. They have a new attitude, different outlook on things. And when we move people around in the front part of the dealership, and I'm talking about the sales operation in terms of management, you really get a lot greater production out of people because it's a new challenge. But problem is, oftentimes people stay in a position way too long. Morale goes down, and that actually increases turnover when morale is low. So to get to level 2, we want to be a better leader. To get to level 2, a leader must do a number of things. The first thing a leader has to do is to challenge the team. You got to start to challenge your team. Again, if you're working in the sales department, challenging the team means working one-on-one with people sometime to get them to move from 10 units a month to 12 units a month. That may be just a small piece of it. You have to be able to encourage others. And when I say encourage others, it's not just those people on your team. One of the best techniques I can give you that you ought to consider doing is every morning when you come to work, I don't care what your position is in the dealership, whatever your management position may or may not be, is you ought to start at the back of the store and work your way to the front. Spend a little time with as many people as you can to try to encourage them, pick them up. As you're working during the day, find a way to say something good to people. Say something like, hey, you're doing a great job. We really appreciate you being here, whatever it may be, but do something to pick others up. And choose your words wisely. So to get to level 2, and we're still in level 1 right now. We're trying to get to level 2. To get to level 2, choose your words wisely. Be careful what you say and how you say it. One of the things that will destroy the morale of a team is that, and I've seen this happen far too many times in my career, is that let's say that we're working a deal, and we're penciling a deal and working a deal, and we get the customer's car appraised, used car managers appraise the car, brings it into whoever happens to be working the deal, the desk manager or whatever, and brings the appraisal in. And the used car manager leaves the room, and there's 2 or 3 salespeople standing around there at the desk or the tower, or however you're structured. They're standing there. And the manager says, God, there he goes again, trying to steal a trade. Boy, you're just killing your organization when you do stuff like that. Be careful what you say. Choose your words wisely, and certainly leave profanity out of the equation. Be smart enough to know their boundaries. You need to understand as a leader, regardless of where you are in the store now. You could be in your first management position, you could be a general manager, but you have to know your boundaries. And by that I mean, you have to be smart enough to know what your level of authority is. And do you want to be running to the boss every time you need to make a decision? No, you don't. Or to your boss? You don't. That's what they hired you for, is to make decisions. But you need to clearly understand what the scope of that is, how far you can go. And there's many things that you do need to be running by your boss. You need to be able to delegate. So the flip side of that is you need to be able to delegate, turn things over to other people to handle, and then certainly follow up to see that it's done correctly. A lot of times, let me back up just a second. A lot of times, that's probably the number one problem as people move into key positions is they don't delegate well. They just don't understand how to do that. They want to check behind everybody on every little detail. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be a good checker, because there's nothing wrong with that. But my goodness, let people do their jobs. Let them understand what their boundaries are, and let them do their jobs. And you should seek out mentors. I have to tell you that I'd like to think I've had a lot of great success, and that's been in large part, because I was smart enough to pick out the right people to follow along behind. Self-educate on a daily basis. So I mentioned some books to you ought to be reading. A good practice for you would be to every day try to find something, a video on YouTube to look at for 10 or 15 minutes every morning before you go to work, or late at night, or whatever it may be. But reading and watching videos is a good way to self-educate, and certainly look for opportunities to go to training. One of the things I'm just a big fan of is 20 groups, and I hope that your dealership is involved in them, because certainly the dealer and members of the management team need to go to those meetings from time to time. You need to get outside the door, so look for chances to go to seminars, 20 groups, state conventions, a national convention, whatever it may be. You have to take it upon yourself. If you're going to get to level 2 and beyond, you have to take it upon yourself to look for ways to educate yourself. So this whole level 2 thing, this is a relationship level. So now we're getting into level 2. So the second level of management, this level 2 thing, this is when relationships are starting to be developed, and growth as a leader starts to take place. This is where you're really starting to grow. You're still in the same position in terms of management. You still may be the sales manager. You still might be the F&I manager. You still might be the general sales manager. But growth as a leader really starts to take place here. You're starting to get dialed in. You're starting to read information. You're starting to educate yourself, whatever it may be. And people now are starting to follow you because they want to. See, they're starting to say, you know what, this is an enthusiastic person. Boy, that's a big word that we really need to have more of. But this is an enthusiastic person. I want to be more like that person. They're following you. Managers at this level, number one, they listen well. They're good listeners. Far too often we're so consumed by our own thoughts that we're not listening to anybody. And you don't just have to listen to people above you. You have to listen to people that are certainly below you. And they observe well. So they're always kind of observing what's going on. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just come in one day when you're off, and I know that's difficult because you work all the time, but just kind of observe what's going on, especially if you're the GSM or GM or the dealer. Just come in and observe. And I've realized that oftentimes when you're observing, you don't always get the true picture, because people are always going to be on their best behavior. But you do need to observe. You need to have a keen sense of peripheral vision. You need to be able to look around and hear and see what the heck's happening. And you're always learning. So back to the self-educating. That's what people do at this level. This is a relationship level. Stay connected to the crowd. Stay connected to the folks. I mentioned that a minute ago about making sure that maybe you start every morning by walking to the store, spending time in different departments with different people, kind of getting an understanding who they are and what they're doing, and have an attitude of servanthood. That's what great leadership is. I mean, any book you read, anything you read about or learn about will talk about servanthood. And ethics become more important than production. So at this level, this is when you really start to blossom and you go, you know what, there's certain things we're willing to put up with and certain things we're not going to put up with. This level is about embracing being a leader. So you're starting to really grab it now. You're starting to get it. You're going, okay, I'm starting to groove on being a leader, and I can be even better if I keep paying attention to what's going on. Bear with me here a second. I got a little problem with my cursive. To get to this level, though, this is really interesting. You have to be likable. You know, to get to and through this level, you have to be likable. Yeah, you really do. I mean, you can't be a jerk and be a successful leader. And just because you're likable doesn't mean that you don't have discipline. It doesn't mean that you're not respected. But you really do have to be likable. I mean, I know there are people in key positions and have gone far in their career, but they're not likable. But they're kind of miserable souls themselves. They're miserable, and they're miserable for people to be around. Let's go here. So the third level of leadership, this is the production level. You can get through this level. Again, I want to emphasize to you, these levels I'm talking about are not necessarily jumps up in management or through management in some way. You could still be in the same position. This could be 6 or 7, 8 or 10 months in one position possibly. This is the production level. You can't get through this level unless you're highly productive. You're starting to have a real impact on the bottom line. Because of your energy and your effort and the things that you're doing and the way you're leading, the bottom line is starting to have a positive impact. And you're having a greater focus on who you will actually allow on your team. So now you're starting to become pickier about who you're going to let be on this team. You're starting to look for certain solid qualities of people that you want to have on your team. People, number one, observe you. And this is something you can never let go of. People are starting to observe you big time at this level. They do what they see. They want to emulate you. These three things. People observing you, they do what they see, they emulate you, easy for me to say. These are the three things that help create some momentum. Momentum is really powerful. Momentum can become your secret weapon as a leader. When you have momentum, you can do great things. You hear about momentum all the time in the sports world, and certainly it applies in your world as well. Momentum and the people you have attracted will solve most of the problems that drag other organizations down. Think about it. And this has a lot to do with the building of your culture, which I'll talk a little bit on later. But these pieces all kind of come into play when you talk about growing an organization. Your team becomes resilient. I mean, really, they do. The team gets to a point where they're strong and they're powerful and they can do great things because you have this momentum thing inside. A standard of competence and excellence starts to build. A standard of competence and excellence starts to build. In my early days, when I first started selling automobiles a long time ago, there was an organization in Virginia Beach, Virginia called Colonial Chevrolet, and they had really built quite an organization. And their whole organization, in my mind, as I think back on it, was built upon the fact that they had very competent people and they were always excellent in whatever they were trying to achieve. And that's the kind of organization certainly you want to be able to build. So the fourth level of management, this is a people development stage. Again, I want to emphasize, and I'm going to keep saying it, and you're going to probably get annoyed about it. This doesn't mean you've moved up in management. It just means you've moved up in how you're leading. This is the people development stage. This is a must to transition from producer to developer. You got to have this. Great leaders empower others. You know, that's what leaders do. They delegate, they empower others. People become your biggest asset. So this is where you really, again, starting to embrace this concept of the people around you are so important. And a realization your company will grow only if you grow people. We all know that. I wrote a book some years ago about not being a stupid manager, and I interviewed a lot of people in business about what they felt was the key to their success. And they all gave me the standard answer that you can imagine. It was about the people around them, about their ability to pick the right people and that sort of thing. Well, if you don't grow your people, once you get the right people, you've got to grow them. You've got to invest some time and money. You need to send them to workshops. You need to send them to 20 group meetings. You need to send them to the NADA convention. That's what starts to grow your leaders. There's 4 elements. First, you have to recruit the best people. That stands to reason, I guess you would say. And then you have to get them on the bus. But, not only do you have to get them on the bus, but you got to get them sitting in the right seat. So oftentimes you have good people, but you've got them doing the wrong job. And you have to equip them well. Equip them well means making sure that they're well trained, well developed. Most of the time for people that are not doing their job correctly, it's a matter either they don't know, they don't do it, and they know it and they don't do it. And you as a leader have to figure that part of it out. But if you don't equip them well, if you don't give them the tools, one of the techniques I used to love as a dealer would be when people were struggling with something, would try to put the burden back on them, and I'd get them to tell me, what do they need from me to get the job done? And if they say, well, boss, we really need another 25 used cars, then if we had 25 more used cars, we could really rock this. Or if they say to me, boss, we need more parts inventory. If they say to me, boss, well, we need another assistant parts manager to make it really happen. Now, once I grant any of those wishes, who's it on? It's on them. I've now equipped them. I've given them what they need. I hope that would make sense to you. 5 steps to equipping them well. Well, first of all, you have to do it. Let me back up just a minute on this before I get too deep in this. When I'm talking to dealers about their used car departments, one of the things I like to point out to them is that they will perform better the more that they wrap their arms around the used car department. As a dealer or general manager or even GSM, so hear me clearly if that's one of your positions, your used car department will perform better the more you personally wrap your arms around it. And that comes from my own experience and things I've observed over the years, and it kind of goes like this. We made the most money in our dealerships when I ran the used car department. And I know this is not a used car webinar, but this is something for you to keep at the forefront of your mind forever, I guess. Because even though I had used car managers, when I wrapped my arms around it, I would move the obstacles. Things get in the way, I would make it happen. I wasn't smarter than some of the people I would eventually turn it over to. Oftentimes I get busy on another project, turn it over to general sales manager or general manager to run and be in charge of, but we never made as much money when they ran it. Again, because I had the power to make it happen. Now, if you are in a situation like this and you're trying to develop someone, let's say I've hired a new used car manager. This is a great example. Let's say I've hired a new used car manager. The best way to make this happen and to develop this person is not to hire them and say, go do it. Even if they have experience, hear me out. Even if they have experience, you hire them from someplace else, which is never the best way to go. But even if that be the case, what's going to happen is what you should be doing is you're going to do it. In other words, I'm going to do it. I do it, meaning I'm going to run that operation. They're going to shadow me. They're going to watch me. They're going to watch me do it. And then at some point, I'm going to do it, and they're going to do it with me. So that's right back to saying the same thing. I've already done it. Now they're going to do it with me. The third one is really important. I hand it off to them. They're going to do it, and I'm going to be with them. I'm going to watch them, and I'm going to tweak them. And I'm using the word here. I'm going to tweak you. I'm going to watch you. I'm going to tweak you. And the fourth piece of that is, at some point, they don't really need me, so I can back off. But here's the piece that really helps you grow your organization, is that now they do it, because I've now got them to the point where they can do it. I've trained them, I helped develop them, I've got them where they can do it. They do it, and somebody else is with them. Somebody else is with you. So now you do it, somebody's with you. And that really holds true. If you're going to grow people, you have to be willing to share information, teach them how to do it, and then back off, let them do it, and encourage them to help others. I used to see this all the time many, many, many years ago. I was in the F&I training business. And you would oftentimes see F&I managers who were pretty darn good at the job in those days and did a really good job, but they didn't want anybody else to see what they were doing or how they did it because they were in fear of their jobs. Never fear of your job. That's kind of silly. But now what's happening is you're now setting a standard of competence and excellence when you do these sort of things. So it takes us, takes us now to the fifth level of management. This is the pinnacle level. This is the fifth level of leadership, not management. This is the pinnacle level. You've earned respect. People now respect you. It gets pretty easy here, actually. It's a much more rewarding, much easier journey at this point. You've done it so well for so long, people want to follow you. People naturally want to follow you. You've known people like that. You may be one of those people, but you've known people like that people naturally want to follow. Well, they had to go through the first 4 stages to get there, trust me. It takes a long time to get to this level. I hope you don't spend all that time in the same management position. So you're achieving these levels sometimes as you're growing and moving through various management positions. People at this level know it's a lifelong journey. They understand that. Again, I'm being a little bit egotistical, a little bit biased here. I'd like to think that I'm a pretty good leader, but I can tell you that even with that thinking, I'm always trying to find that other little piece that will make me that much better, and that's all part of that lifelong journey. It's learning at an always growing level. You're always growing, you're always learning, you're always moving ahead. You're not at the same level with all people. Now, this is pretty interesting. Everyone's not obviously at the same level. People who are around you are not all going to be at the same level, no doubt. And you're not perceived. This is what you have to kind of grab a hold of. You're not perceived by all people to be at the level that you may be at in the eyes of some other people. So you may have been on this journey with some people and they've watched you grow, and now they see you at this pinnacle level, this fifth level of management or leadership, fifth level leadership. But everyone may not view you that way, and you have to understand that you're always having to earn that through them. They see you through their own level. So depending on where they are, their view of you may be different than other people may view you. So the vision you toss out to them is received at their level, not your level. So that's a struggle for us a lot of times, because we will often really struggle with the fact that why doesn't everybody get it? Why don't they all see it the way we do? And the reason if they did, they'd be in your position maybe. But, you're tossing your vision out to them based on your world and how you see things. But they're not quite at your level yet. They don't see it that way. They're just trying to do their daily job, and that sometimes frustrates us. You can influence all levels when you continue to study and understand all levels. So you have to be a student of these different levels and understand where other people are in your organization in their level. And if you understand that, then you'll have a better understanding of the view they have of you, if that makes sense, and I hope it does. 5 questions to answer yourself. So I think that these 5 questions, these are already in your book, I do believe, or maybe not, I can't recall. But the bottom line here, though, is these are some questions you should be asking yourself. I mean, really, you ought to if you're watching this on video, you ought to turn this video off and then answer these questions as we go through them. What level are you at? You as an individual. Maybe there's 5 people sitting in the room looking at this video right now. What level are each of you at? And you have to be really honest with yourself, and that's difficult to do sometimes. But you ought to turn this off and have some conversation about that. And what do you need to do, you as an individual, what do you need to do to get to the next level? What can you improve on to take yourself to the next level? And what level are the people at that answer directly to you? That's a little bit different than the people in the room, or it could be the same group of people. But if you're a manager in the room, there's a bunch of people that maybe answer to you. What level are they at? Can you recognize what level others are at in your organization? Because it's important to understand that when you understand where they are and what their view is, it's going to make it much, much easier for you to function as a leader. And what can you do to get others to the next level? See, that's where you play such a role, regardless of what their position is. They don't have to be a manager. But you as a leader, what can you do to help get them to the next level? Jack Welch said this well. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. So before you really become a leader, you're trying to do and produce and blah, blah, blah to get yourself to where you're trying to go. But when you become a leader, success is all about growing others. I think it's a pretty powerful statement. So that takes us to leader as a champion of core values. I want to talk about being a champion. The fastest way to get to each level certainly is a champion fights or defends or has a passion for a cause, idea, or culture. Yes, I looked that definition up. That's what a champion does. But what are you a champion of? I mean, are you a champion of certain key components that may be part of your culture and your organization? We'll talk about those. At least I will, and you'll have to listen. So be a champion of core values. So here's one of my biggest pet peeves about people who are supposed to be in leadership positions, and that is they're not really a champion of responding. I oftentimes write about this in my newsletters. Being responsive is a matter of choice. It says responding, not be a champion of responsibility. Be a champion of being responsive, which is sort of being responsible. Oftentimes we don't respond to people when they've sent us a text message or an email or left us a voicemail. We don't respond to them. And we really, if we're going to be a leader, we have to kind of make that one of those things that's really important to us to make sure we respond. I can tell you, if you've ever had any dealings with me, if you send me an email or a text message or leave me a voicemail, I'm going to get back to you just as fast as I possibly can. This is critical. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Oftentimes we say to people, I'll get back to you on that this afternoon. We don't do it. Sometimes it's an employee. Sometimes it's a customer. Sometimes it's a team member, however you want to think about that. But that drives people crazy. If you've ever been on the other side of either one of these, someone not responding to you or someone not doing what they say they're going to do, you can appreciate that. You have to set the bar and set the standard for that. Remember, everybody's watching you. Have an eat the frog mentality. Do the things that you hate first. There's a theory out there that says eat the frog mentality, and I believe this is Mark Twain's deal, and Mark Twain developed that concept. And what that simply means is that if you eat a frog first thing in the morning, when you first come to work, eat a frog, nothing you taste the rest of the day is going to taste any worse. And if you have two frogs, eat the biggest and nastiest frog first. And the concept again here is that when you have something on your plate that you need to get rid of, the sooner you get it off your plate, the better off you're going to be. So it may be responding to a request that someone has. It may be dealing with a customer complaint. It might be dealing with an employee issue. But the sooner you get the nasty stuff out of the way, the better your day is going to be. And you need to always realize that there's a monkey see, monkey do thing going on. Everybody's watching you. You're a leader. There's expectations of you. And however you conduct yourself, how you dress, how you walk, how you talk, how you treat people, it's all going to play into your organization. Be a champion of empathy. That was a good one. Can you recognize the emotions of others? Today, people are very emotional. I guess they always have been, but it just seems to be more prevalent as you observe things like social media and that sort of thing, and watch some of the mess you have on TV, which probably good to avoid all that, I guess. But can you recognize the emotions of others? Are you staying connected and grounded? That's that whole thing about communicating with people, spending some time with as many people as you can every day. And here's the simplest thing in the world in terms of this, and that is the golden rule. The number one rule is the golden rule. If we just as leaders, our team members, if we treated everybody the way we'd like to be treated, we'd be so much better off. I mean, think about that, how simple life would be. That's with our customers and with our team members. Be a champion of self-evaluation. Boy, that's a tough one. Look in the mirror and do it frequently. I know that's hard. But, most of the time or frequently the problems that we're dealing with are staring right back at us in the mirror, and we can figure it out if we work hard enough. What can you do better? We can all do better. We can all do better. And we can all do more, as a matter of fact. As you're sitting there right now, raise your hand if you would for me, please. Just raise your hand. I know I can't see you, but I believe that you just raised your hand. Then raise it higher. See what I mean? You can do more. You can raise it higher. You can probably raise it higher a couple more times, as a matter of fact. Seek feedback from those who will tell you the truth, of course. That's hard to do, too. People have a hard time, depending on where you are in leadership and management. They have a hard time being honest with you. Never stop learning. Never have it figured out. This oftentimes frustrates newer leaders, newer managers, because they see that the organization, the dealership, in most of your cases, is always changing something. You have to realize, it's a moving target. We never get this thing figured out. You never have it. You never get it quite figured out. You always need to understand change is not a bad thing. Discipline, champion of discipline, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. I think I made that saying up. If I didn't, I've used it so much over the years, I think I own it. But you get to pick which pain you're going to have, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You get to make that decision. I mean, it's a great life lesson for your children and your grandchildren. You get to decide which pain you're going to have. In the used car workshops that I teach, I talk about the pain of regret. Or the pain of discipline in this sense. The pain of discipline is doing a lot of little things every day so you don't have aged inventory. The pain of regret is you wake up one day with a mess on your hands. You get to pick which one. That's the cool part about this. And we must hold ourselves and others accountable. We struggle with that. That's what leaders do, though. Leaders have the ability to do that. They hold themselves accountable first, and they hold others accountable. We struggle with that. Know and utilize the lead bulls. Every organization, every dealership, every department has lead bulls. The lead bulls are the poop stirrers. You need to know who they are. The lead bull, every department has one. They're usually very productive people, but they're always stirring the crap. You got to know who they are. You have to know how to manage and lead those folks. Sometimes it takes a little one-on-one time with them to get on board. And this is difficult to do at times, but sometimes one of the best things you'll ever do is to fire one of the lead bulls. You'll hear a big cheer go out throughout your organization when you do that. And I know it's difficult to do, but if you can't get them on board, they're just destroying your culture and your organization. Without discipline, there's chaos. You got to have discipline. If you don't have discipline, everything's going to fall apart. Think about any great sports team that you would know. I can guarantee you that they were really well disciplined. Discipline is so critical to your success. Be a champion of moving the strategy bar. Stay ahead of the strategy curve. Strategies are always changing. I kind of alluded to that before, but they are. You have to understand that. You can't just get to a place and say, okay, we've got it figured out. You don't get it figured out. You really don't. You must sell the strategies to your team. So frequently as a leader, you've got all these great ideas in your head. You have a great strategy. You kind of know what you want to do. And some of your key managers, key leaders, they kind of understand it. But we haven't done a good enough job of selling it to your team. You got to make sure the team can restate the strategy. Everybody's got to understand the mission, what we're doing, where we're going, what's it all about, why are we doing it. Don't be afraid to explain it. What strategies can you take back to the store? So I would say to you today, what strategies can you take back and put into play that we may be talking about here? And be a champion of enthusiasm. You know what? You got to act it before you can be it. You know, everybody is not an extrovert. Everybody's not enthusiastic. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to do it. But you'll never, if you're not that sort of natural personality, you're going to have to fake it till you make it, so to speak. You become a magnet for others. When you're enthusiastic, people want to be around you. People want to be around leaders. Not all leaders show this sort of enthusiasm, but they do it in subtle ways. But people want to be around enthusiastic people. Enthusiasm shows you're passionate. I don't know how you can be successful without being passionate with whatever business you're in. I do see people sometimes that aren't passionate. It was a gift. It was something handed down from the family, and they're just kind of doing it, whatever business it might be. Frequently it is an automobile business. You'll see that. But they're successful in spite of whatever. They got a great franchise, great town, great market, great location. It just happens. Here's something you ought to focus on, and that is reach out and high five someone. You know, I can't think of anything that creates a more immediate enthusiasm than high five. And I do it all the time. I high five waitresses. Recently I got pulled over by a cop. I high fived the cop. I didn't get a ticket. I don't know if it had anything to do with the high five and the cop or not. But bottom line is, put it in play. If you're not doing it, do it more often. Now, leadership is a catalyst for creating a defining culture. Culture is what separates one group from another. You know, that's what leadership does, though. Good leaders are helping to define the culture. They're listening to other people. They're helping to define it. Everybody's involved in this thing. But your culture and your organization is what separates you from another. Culture is what defeats all enemies, strategies and tactics. Culture is so powerful. Culture is all about your people and the people that you bring into the organization and how you help mold that operation. Culture is what gets you to where you want to go. I mean, culture will really determine your fate in so many ways. Culture is communication. So you have to be able to communicate this culture. Just because you desire it does not make it so. Culture is your ability, your ability to communicate, rather, will determine the success and failure of the culture you desire. Your communication skills. And again, I don't know where you are personally with communication, but your ability to communicate and to sell, we're always selling, to sell your organization is what's going to determine your success. Culture is a living, breathing thing, has to be watered every day. Yeah, watered and fed every day. It's not like shake and bake. There used to be a product years ago, I don't know if they still have it or not, in the grocery stores called shake and bake. You know, you put a piece of chicken or a pork chop and stuff, you shake it up and you bake it, and it's done, and you eat, and everything's great. Well, culture doesn't work that way. You can't just shake and bake it. You got to work on this every day to have the culture. Leaders do not sacrifice culture for results. You will sometimes see organizations hire someone, they bring them in the organization, and they destroy that organization's, in this case probably a dealership, they destroy the culture because of the way they're doing things. And they get results, at least for a short period of time, because some of the things they're doing, some of which probably aren't all that good for you and your organization long term, but they destroy the culture. You can't let that happen. Be a champion of your culture. Now, I want to talk about legacy thinking. Legacy thinking, the definition of legacy thinking, just so you understand what it means and the way I'm referencing anyway, is viewing the present and future through thoughts from the past. It's viewing the present and the future through thoughts from the past. So, oftentimes we make decisions based on our past results. That's kind of what happens. Legacy thinking wins us over because leaders must get results now. And what happens is because we've always done things a certain way and it's gotten us decent results, we don't want to jump outside of that. So legacy thinking is very comfortable. We're comfortable with it. We've always done it that way, so we stick with it. Legacy thinking is what we know. It's what we know best. It's what got us to where we are today. So legacy thinking ends up winning out over moving forward. It keeps us from moving forward oftentimes because we're locked into the past. Legacy thinking ignores changes taking place outside of our organization. They ignore some of the things that are going on. They ignore the fact that many organizations no longer have PACs. They're not paying on gross. That we ignore some of the things that are going on out there, and that holds us back and certainly pulls us back. Legacy thinking, though, reduces our fear of the unknown. So we don't, as long as we can stay locked into our old-fashioned way of doing things, and we're comfortable and everything works well in our minds, but it's really not. It's holding you back. How do leaders defy legacy thinking? Well, leaders thrive on challenging the status quo. No doubt. That's what leaderships love doing. They love saying, you know what, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. They just love it. Leaders say, look, this is difficult. Let's do it. I have a good friend of mine a number of years ago. He's a friend and a client. A number of years ago, he decided to go to one-price selling. And, he had a lot of success not doing one-price selling, but he just felt it was the right thing to do in the right time, and he did it. And he'll tell you that it was the most miserable year of his life, the first year that he did it. He lost a lot of money. He lost a lot of good people. But he says today that he would never go back to the other way, even as painful as it was. So he knew it was going to be difficult. He said, you know what, guys, this is not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. But we're going to do it because he knew it was the right thing to do. Leaders don't panic and they never follow the crowd. Of course they don't. They're not going to follow the crowd. They're willing to step outside of the easy part of their little gig and try something different. Leaders use momentum to overcome naysayers. Remember, I talked about momentum earlier. You build on momentum, easy for me to say again. You build momentum by the way you lead your organization. And when you have that kind of leadership and you have momentum, you can accomplish almost most anything. And you're going to have some naysayers. There are going to be people within your organization when you're trying to change something that want to see it fail. You'll have people that will be nodding their heads to you as you're the leader. They're going to be nodding their heads, yeah, I'm all on board, I'm all for this, but they aren't. They're circumventing whatever it is you're trying to do. And good leaders, this is what they do. They say, if it ain't broke, break it and fix it again. You've heard that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're always trying to fix it. So let's sum this up. I'm going to give you kind of a little summation here, sort of, not a big summation. 60% of the people in your organization, they struggle to get it. They really do. They don't understand this whole leadership thing. They may never really get it because they don't really care enough to get it, or they haven't been shown the way. That's your challenge as a leader, to show the way. 25% of the people in your organization, they're trying to get it. They kind of want to. They want to go to the next level. They want to progress. They want to see the organization do well. But they need a little kick of inspiration. They need you to help push them over the edge, so to speak. And then there's always that 15% that do get it. It's almost like it's automatic. They get it. But that 15% stays very frustrated over time by a lot of the 25 and the other 60%. It frustrates them because everybody doesn't see it the way they do. But what their mission should be is to see what they can do to pull more people up. This concludes the presentation. I'll be sending you an email. If you were in a webinar with me, you may be viewing this in some other way with a survey. I would urge you to fill the survey out. It'll be really short. I would be very grateful if you would do that. Leadership is a fun thing. I encourage you to dig in, read some books, study it more, pay more attention, get outside of your organization, go to different types of workshops and meetings. You'll be so much better off for it. Thank you and have a great day.